Hello friends, today we are going to study about the properties of cardiac muscle. Basically, there are four properties of cardiac muscle. First is the excitability. Second is the rhythmicity, and third is the conductivity, and fourth is contractility. This is the four special features of the cardiac muscle, and we are going to deal about these features individually. First, talking about the excitability. What is excitability? Excitability is defined as ability of a living tissue to give response to excitability is the ability of living tissue to give response to a stimulus. Initial response to a stimulus is electrical activity in the form of action potential, followed by mechanical activity, which can be in the form of contraction or secretion. First, dealing about the resting membrane potential. Resting membrane potential of a single cardiac muscle fiber. Resting membrane potential of single cardiac muscle fiber is about -85 to -95 millivolt, and resting membrane potential of sinoatrial node is -55 to -60 millivolt, and of Purkinje fiber is -90 to -100 millivolt. Talking about the action potential, I am going to denote it with AP. Action potential. Action potential in cardiac muscle is different from the other tissue such as skeletal muscle or smooth muscle or nerve tissue. That means the action potential which is seen in other parts of the body like skeletal muscle, smooth muscle or nervous tissue, the action potential seen in cardiac muscle is different from the other tissue. So duration of action potential in cardiac muscle is about 250 to 350 milliseconds, or you can say it as 0.25 to 0.35 seconds. Phases of action potential. Phases of action potential. Basically, there are four different phases of action potential. First is the initial depolarization. Second is initial repolarization. Third is a plateau of final depolarization. And fourth phase is final repolarization. Talking about the initial depolarization. Initial depolarization is very fast and lasts for about 2 milliseconds. And amplitude of depolarization is about plus 20 millivolt. Then talking about the initial repolarization. Initial repolarization is immediately after the initial depolarization. That is followed by depolarization is the initial repolarization. There is an initial rapid repolarization for a very short period of about 2 milliseconds. The end of rapid repolarization is represented by a notch. If you draw a graph, then it is represented by a notch. We will draw a graph. Then a plateau or a final depolarization. Afterwards, the muscle fiber remain in depolarized state for some time before further going to repolarization, and it forms a plateau in the graph. And this is a stable period in action potential, and it lasts for about 200 milliseconds in atrial muscle fiber and 300 milliseconds in ventricular muscle fiber. Talking about the final repolarization occurs after the plateau, and it is slow process and lasts for about 50 to 80 milliseconds before the re-establishment of resting membrane potential. So let's draw a graph of action potential curve in a ventricle. This is the y-axis and this is the x-axis. In the x-axis we will take the time, and in the y-axis we will take amplitude. This is minus 100, minus 80, minus 60, minus 40, minus 20, 0 and plus 20. Here is the time 0.2 millisecond, 0.2 second, 0.4 and 0.6. So when we draw the graph of action potential, it is like this. So this initial phase is the graph of first phase, that is initial depolarization. This notch area represents the initial repolarization, and this is the plateau phase, and this is the final repolarization. This shows the curve of action potential in ventricle. Talking about the ionic basis of action potential. First phase was initial depolarization. That is the first phase of action potential, and it is because of the rapid opening of fast sodium channel and rapid influx of sodium ion. Initial depolarization. What happened in initial depolarization? There is a rapid opening of fast sodium ion channel. As a result, there is rapid influx of the sodium ion. Second is the initial repolarization. Initial repolarization. Initial repolarization is due to transient or short duration opening of potassium channel. What happened? There is a transient or short duration opening of potassium channel, and there is efflux of small quantity of potassium ion from the muscle fiber. As a result, what happened? There is a efflux of small quantity of potassium ion. Simultaneously, this fast sodium channel closes suddenly and slow sodium channel opens. The fast sodium channel, which was opened during initial depolarization, closes, and slow sodium channel opens, resulting in slow influx of low quantity of sodium ion. So what happened in initial repolarization? There is a opening of potassium channel, that is transient opening of potassium channel, and as a result there is efflux of small quantity of potassium ion, and the fast sodium channel, which was opened during initial depolarization, closes now and slow sodium channel opens. As a result, there is a slow influx of low quantity of sodium ion. Coming to the next phase is the plateau or final depolarization. Plateau or final depolarization due to a slow opening of calcium channel. Plateau or final depolarization happens due to slow opening of calcium channel. And these calcium channels are kept open for a longer period and causes influx of large number of calcium ion. Already the slow sodium channels are opened, through which slow influx of sodium ion continues, and because of the entry of calcium and sodium ion into the muscle fiber, the positivity is maintained inside the muscle fiber. So because of the influx of the sodium ion and calcium ion, the positivity of muscle fiber is maintained, producing prolonged depolarization, that is plateau, prolonged depolarization, forming plateau in the graph. Calcium ion entering the muscle fiber play an important role in the contractile process of the muscle. So let's revise what happened during the plateau or the final depolarization. The slow opening calcium channels, there is so what happened during, so let's revise the plateau or the final depolarization. Due to the slow opening of calcium channel, the calcium channel, there is a large influx of the calcium ion, and the slow sodium channels are already open, and there is a slow influx of low quantity of sodium. Because of the entry of calcium ions and the sodium ion, the positivity of muscle fiber is maintained, producing prolonged depolarization, that is plateau in the graph. And calcium ion entering in the muscle fiber play an important role in contractile process. So coming up to the next is the final repolarization. Final repolarization is due to the efflux of potassium ion, and number of potassium ion moving out of the muscle fiber exceeds the number of calcium ion moving in. That is, number of potassium ion moving out exceeds the number of calcium ions moving in. It makes the negativity inside. As a result, there is negativity inside, resulting in final repolarization. Potassium efflux continue until the end of repolarization. So what happened during the final repolarization? There is due to efflux of potassium ion, the number of potassium ions moving out exceeds the number of calcium ions moving in. So the negativity, so there is negativity inside, resulting in final repolarization, and potassium efflux continue until the end of repolarization. So next is the restoration of resting membrane potential. Restoration of resting membrane potential. At the end of final repolarization, all the sodium ion which had entered the cell throughout the process of action potential moves out of the cell, and potassium ions move into the cell, and potassium ion move into the cell by activation of sodium potassium pump. And simultaneously there is an excess of calcium ion. There is excess of calcium ion which had entered the muscle fiber also moves out through sodium calcium pump, and thus the resting membrane potential potential is restored. So let me again revise it. After the repolarization, or at the end of the final repolarization, all the sodium ions which had entered the cell throughout the process of action potential moves out of the cell, and the potassium ion move into the cell by activation of sodium potassium pump. Simultaneously, meanwhile, what happened, the excess of calcium ion which had entered the muscle fiber also moves out of the cell through sodium calcium pump, and thus the resting membrane potential is restored. So this completes the first feature of cardiac muscle, that is the excitability, and in the next video we will be covering the other features of the cardiac muscle, that is rhythmicity. So if you like my video, then do share it, like it, and subscribe my channel, and thank you so much for watching my video. Thank you.